perfect this time.
Back in the game.
Yo, what's up? This is Ty Sbano.
How's it going, Kunal?
CISO of Vercel. Our boy is here.
How we doing?
Dude,
Good to see you.
I'm in sunny San Mateo right now.
I'm enjoying the sun. I'm wearing this sweet dope security jacket. What's up? How we doing?
I need to get you one of those, man.
For sure.
So,
Looking forward to rocking this.
you know the story behind those? Those are actually like painted in India.
I didn't know that they were painted in India. I know your designer designed it very early on and did a good job.
So Ashley, we found her actually through Erica, who's the UX designer. So she's in charge of design and whatnot. She's like, Ashley can crush it on this stuff. And I was like, well, make her make the logo.
There you go.
And the logo had to be this mix between like fashion design and cybersecurity somehow.
Well, it worked out pretty well. And we're all flying direct now.
We're all flying direct, exactly. But today we're in the car and I wanted to like ask you some questions, see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most importantly, like I think you're a CISO of a really, and for anyone that's out there that doesn't know, Vercel pretty much like owns the front end industry right now. I say owns because there's all these like micro tooling that you need to make your front end developments and deployments faster.
We've got some workflow coming along. We've got some cool stuff in the security realm coming soon. But yeah, the front end cloud and what we're doing is, I wouldn't say we own it. I would be very conscientious to say we've earned a lot of the opportunities here, but there's more to be done to make this even better. And I think that's where we want to make engineers and developers just have the ability to
Like
develop preview, and ship
easier.
it. And then all of a sudden, everyone just has a website.
Well, that's the point though, right? Right now, if you're trying to go and build like some new app out there, like a lot of the technologies, they're building it on Vercel from a front end perspective. But I mean, obviously there's the security considerations of that, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're handling both the internal IT security, let's call it, as well as the external, customer facing aspect of it.
We're figuring that one out. As I signed up for this company, there were a lot of opportunities with building the internal program, and I've done that many times, but the actual aspect of building a product security and taking that experience and then ultimately building it for my community.
Right.
Because if engineers choose Vercel, ultimately I can allow them to choose Vercel's security capability, and less do they have to care who's your CSP, who's your cloud service provider. How do you secure all this stuff? It's like, guess what? Just ship code, make sure your code is good.
And then you're in business.
Make sure your access identity authorization is good. We will take care of all the rest on the back end. And you just know you have a good, stable website that is out there ready for you.
And so like the front end is typically hosted on the Vercel, right?
That is correct. We are really the profit center, and the back end ultimately ends up being your cost center, right? That's the tough part, is like you end up with these cloud providers, and I've done this for 18 years, and I've seen the swing of like our data center versus like, now a cloud provider. Oh wait, maybe we'll go back to a private cloud. And it's like, hosting gets tricky, but how much do you really need to care about the nuances as an engineer that works on front end?
Yeah.
You don't.
You don't.
You don't want to.
You don't want to.
That's right.
I mean, I think that like hiring this kind of talent, especially like, you've seen the product, right? For dope security, it's like we had such a keen focus on design.
Yeah.
Everything has to be a few clicks. And that's why whenever we're doing something like this, cybersecurity probably barely uses these newer age technologies.
We have opportunities in our security community to make the idea of leading with design first. And I think that's something we don't always think about. We think about,
you heard it here first.
Sometimes
leading with design first.
Sometimes workflow, sometimes checking the box in compliance, but we don't always think about that end user in mind. So if you look at traditional tools like antivirus or VPN, they can be clunky, they can be noisy, you could be confused. There's performance hogs as well. Tell me an engineer.
That's because they're old, right?
Well, I don't know if it's that they're old. I think they're just maybe resource intensive. Based on everything that they're trying to do in boiling the ocean. But that unfortunately blows back to the security teams choosing these tools because they don't have that connection or that empathy back to the people they're trying to help protect and defend.
That's a good word. Empathy.
Empathy is very important to me when it comes to anything that we do in life.
Integrity and empathy are some of my favorites because like if you're going to go in and build something for someone, you should understand the world they're living in.
I mean, if you're building it for them, then build it for them, right? Like if you're building it for you, it's a very different thing. But if you're not going to take their feedback seriously, if you're not going to think about their use cases and you're just building a product, well, who's going to buy it?
But that's something that I used to find, and I was at these big cybersecurity companies. I used to find that there was a little bit of a dearth of that.
Yeah. Well, when you become so big, you believe you own the domain.
Yeah.
Right. And you haven't earned the opportunity to keep helping customers.
And everyone just feels about, integration, when it's like, hey, there's a reason a Vercel exists versus you going and just using CloudFront to deploy your front end.
That's right.
And that is what I think in cybersecurity is a little bit of a disconnect,
Well, we have wonderful engineers join our company to create solutions for themselves. Yeah. I would ask that of our security community. Go join the companies that you're solving a problem that you want to help see fixed for your community. That is very compelling to me, that like I get to work with these engineers that are the best in the world.
At front end.
Not just at the front end, back end. API design, architecture, understanding
how should we do this?
Why am I at this company? Because I want to make my community happier.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It is just a very different experience and so fun and engaging in contrast to folks that maybe it's just it's just a job.
But you're a CISO, right? Yeah. Like, that's a huge title. But you have to tell me, like, there are so many people out there that they want to be CISOs.
Yes.
So how should they do it?
Well, first question their sanity if they really want to do it and think, do I actually want to be a CISO or do I want to grow my career? And I think that's something you have to take a step back and really understand.
But why are those different?
I think it's stressful to just jump into a CISO role and not understand the ramifications or how to set yourself up for success without a strong core of advisors, your advisory board as a person, to know that this is a good decision for you.
Got it.
And I think you have to take the time to build towards that opportunity as opposed to just, hey, I want to be a CISO. Who's going to hire you? In my first year of my career as like a consultant, who's going to hire me to become a CISO?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when somebody is trying to become a CISO, like, let's just say that they are interested, they're trying to do it. Like, what would you recommend? Like, what's top 3 things you'd recommend though?
Top 3 things. I think first one is get educated.
Yeah.
Right. So make sure you have a ground level understanding. Certifications can help. I got my master's in information assurance. My undergrad is in information science and technology with a focus on cybersecurity. So I've been very dedicated to this field.
Yeah.
The folks that want to trickle in, you got to get educated. You have to understand the basic premise of how do we get here? The second thing, work.
Yeah.
Put in the work and grind and understand, if I'm going to build teams, if I'm going to build functions, well, I have to have empathy for all the people that are doing the endpoint protection, that are managing.
Configuring everything.
I mean, it's part of the run the engine process. And if you haven't done it, it's really hard to manage people that are going to do that.
Yeah, very true. But you know what? I would say that is actually something that's missing on the, let's call it the vendor product development side.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that have not even used the products that they're selling.
I don't understand that. For me, that's part of like, if I'm interviewing at a company, I want to use their product to understand.
But it's too difficult for people to understand.
But, well, if it's too difficult, then how is anyone else going to use it?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm telling you, and I'm not mentioning any names, but I have lived in these roles.
That's fair.
And my boss could not pick out the products in a lineup.
I don't know how to process that, but I wish the best to your
And they say that it's the best product, by the way. They're like, oh, our product's the best. I'm like, dog, you haven't even seen the product.
Trust but verify is such an important sentiment in the security community.
Yeah.
You're trusting a lot of other people's statements. Are you verifying that is a true?
Verify. Yeah, that's very important.
Is that true?
But like, if I was going to be in a product role, I mean, because there's a lot of companies out there starting and everything, but what do you think, or what do you feel sets the products apart? Makes a product dope?
I think we kind of touched on it, the design aspect of use. So how are you blending it in? How do you make design just natural? When we think of everyone having a cell phone in their pocket, like, you think smartphones were cool?
Yeah.
And they were personal digital assistants?
Right.
There were only a few of us that were rocking those, getting made fun of, but eventually everyone's like, wow, I can just have apps to do everything, and maybe I don't even need a computer anymore because I don't use it in that way. But I think about that design and that use, and so if you reflect on aspects like biometric authentication, did you think everyone would have biometric authentication
on their phone,
and they're just like, cool, I'm good to go?
I think it was like very in 2010, 11, it was very different time.
It was different. And understanding the secure element or the secure enclave for these products, most people don't understand that. They're just like, oh.
I guess that's the beauty of it. They don't have to understand.
They don't have to understand. That is exactly the beauty versus I work at a big bank. They make me scan all these things. It's very scary. What do they do with this data? Do they keep it forever? Versus, for some reason, Apple designed this or Google designed this in a way that it stays in this enclave, in this secure element, just for me. What a cool way to go about it. As practitioners, we all said, this is great, and it's getting better. And it's a vastly different way for consumers just to say, cool, we all have smartphones now versus we used to have flip phones. Guess what? Flip phones are coming back. But I think that's the part. You have to have that design element in mind whenever you're building a product.
Yeah, and that's actually where we started. You know, when I first decided, like, got to do something different.
Yep.
Being from the Bay Area, saying dope all the time. If I'm like, yo, dope, see you at this coffee shop, it's very common, right?
Yep.
But seeing that manifest into, like, what is this product actually going to look like? Before we even design what the architecture or underlying APIs, what is the actual software? How do you build the software? What is the actual admin experience?
Yeah.
We had all the design for the product before the product itself.
I think that's the right way to go because you have a vision and people are behind this vision and they're going to build the requirements against it versus like you have a text document that says we need to do something in the
X or Y,
in the DOM, and then this is how it's going to connect, and then everyone goes, cool, it'll get accomplished, but you have no idea how that's going to look at the end of the day.
That is one thing that I've found when you go in and you go to like certain products, 75 super menu, jumbo size menu options.
I feel like I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You know, it starts with a Z, ends with a scalar.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
So what happens is that those menu items become this like huge learning experience for an IT security engineer.
And imagine if you deploy it wrong, how would you ever know?
You would never know, right? And unfortunately, there's this super specialized PhD level knowledge that you need to go in and deploy this stuff. And I'm telling you, like, I worked at a company where you had to sell pro services with the product. I think that's ridiculous.
It depends. I think certain products need some level of support.
For sure.
But it sure would be nice if every product could be just easy to understand and walk through without having to have this guide, or you have a digital guide to take you through. So I'm very aligned on that when it comes to like that forced requirement of like, welcome to year one. You're not going to figure out our product unless we take you through it. And it's like, do I need a Sherpa every time?
Every time.
Climb any mountain?
Any mountain.
Right?
I mean, that is one thing that I believe has changed. And when I look at it today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, it's always a decade-long journey. And everyone that is really passionate about what they do, they have that journey associated with it. Like even you, like you came in, you started off you did your time. As an IC. You
still doing my time.
Still doing your time. You went to CISO. I think that's the same thing for like a product company out there too. You have to evolve with the time. But I think like for so many people, when they're building that product or they're building that company, it may not be cybersecurity related, by the way. They get to 100, 200 people. Like, what do they do? Like, what should they do from a cybersecurity perspective?
I think as you scale up, again, understanding, let's give it a second. Understanding like, what are your crown jewels? What is your threat model? What is your business and what do you care about? And
so let's say like an engineering company, like startup kind of a thing.
Well then, okay, where are your secrets? Are you rotating your keys? What would happen when something gets compromised? Are we testing the resiliency of this company? But for me, the starting point of that conversation should be, what are the risks that we actually care about that may end this company? Right? And the more you get aligned and you're crisp with the whole leadership team and the organization of what's important, that's how you refactor and make it better and more resilient.
But if somebody is looking at it like from the service perspective, they're giving a SaaS service. And then there's also the internal thing, because a lot of times when people think about getting hacked, it's like, hey, some laptop or some device in my company got attacked. Or got a malware on it. Or got a virus.
Or didn't have 2FA on it because we forgot about it and it's just
for example.
That's very common.
So what is step 0 to that security hygiene perspective?
Make it easy for your employees. Offer them a password manager. Make sure that single sign-on is as effectively rolled out as it can be.
So like SSO, first off, everywhere.
I mean, I wouldn't say everywhere because sometimes it's cost prohibitive based on certain companies that say you must sign up enterprise. And you're like, wow, 30 extra K for 10 users. No, thank you. We're going to manually review.
By the way, I think that's ridiculous when people do that shit.
I don't disagree. We also have this gentleman behind us enforcing the law, just as a heads up.
There's a police officer behind us. We're definitely fucked. He's definitely going to stop us.
The light set up. We'll find out. No more U-turns for a second.
Yeah, no more U-turns. But anyways, so then there's the next part is from single sign-on to, let's just say, for example, what about your devices themselves? Like endpoint management, some sort of like MDM kind of a thing?
Yeah, I think there's a certain scaling point for every company where, you know, if you have one IT person, you're probably doing all right. You know, you're probably doing okay if you're 100 to 200 people. And there's someone that's responsible as far as owning, managing, keeping things patched. But realistically speaking, trying to convince 100 people to patch or update or relying on automatic updates is tough. And if you're managing a fleet, it's very intelligent of you to think about mobile device management and manage that very consistently. So I think the same way when it comes to cloud environments too.
And the majority of people that are going in and doing something like that, right? Like they just, I mean, again, not talking about specific vendors, but let's just say they go in and throw on a Jamf or something like that onto all their laptops.
Yep.
Or like an Intune on all their laptops.
Yep.
So I think those things are things that they should start with. Single sign-on, then like some sort of managements of their devices and whatnot.
Yeah, and you get visibility. You know, it's not just accountability of knowing where these things are. You get visibility. What else is on them?
But what about NGAV?
You know,
what about EDR?
Sure. I mean, you can think about how advanced some of the malware is going to be, but in reality, some of the native things like Windows Defender is not terrible. It's actually okay.
It has the capability of doing what you need it to do, basically.
Yeah, and Mac OS X has built-in protections as well when it comes to malicious unsigned code running on your system. So I think there are size and scale that you can think about as far as when and what is the right place for your company. But also, let's be realistic right now. Do you have the budget?
That's true too.
Yeah, that's the tougher
like
question.
A couple grand are you going to spend here or there, right?
Yeah.
And I think like that, I like that point that you say it because it's really important for people to understand that it's not just about throw on a bunch of stuff onto your devices, but because you're in that position that you are a startup, even though more established, but you still have hundreds of people at the company, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of have chosen the tools that you want to be used based on those success criteria.
And you want to make sure you're spending money wisely if it's a non-public company with aspirations of being public.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be efficient. You want to be cost conscious. But if you're going to buy every security tool in the world and you burned all the budget from marketing and everyone else, like, well,
that's not going to work.
The company has stopped being successful.
Right.
You know, so I think you have to play with the company as far as what is the ultimate goal in the end state and what is the right timing. And I think that's where people like myself, CISOs, need to be really engaged as far as what is the business model. And then we integrate those touch points to say, it's a logical time and place for us to say SSO all the way versus, hey, we're going to do manual access reviews once a year just to check a box. But guess what? We're burning so much money because of unused licenses and all this other stuff that we could have saved 10, 20, 50 grand. It does, like, you'd be surprised how inefficient companies can be because they just keep buying tools.
And you have to, do you clean them up?
Oh, I'm a big fan of cleaning up. I've always been, before a CISO, I've always been a janitor.
Yeah.
Right? And it's cleaning up messes, but it's also just understanding what is the inventory of stuff that we care about? What are we going to do with it? How frequently is it used? But if we're in a business case where there's no problem statement being solved and we're just spending $100 grand on a tool because it has one extra bell and whistle compared to another tool that maybe records a video stream, you're like, QuickTime could have did that.
Done that. Why do you need to buy this other
SaaS
one?
provider? Yeah. So I find those very interesting how companies grow.
And this idea of pragmatism that you're bringing up, though, because that is the thing. You have to be pragmatic, problem solving around what is the problem, rather than, hey, here's a new solution. And I think that's the big thing about product management. See, that's my background. Right?
Solution to what?
Yeah.
What's your problem?
What's the problem? And you have to ask the problem, like, what is the question? What is the problem? Like 15 times.
Yes.
Because everyone, to anyone, is a different problem, right? Oh, I want coffee. Okay, but why do you want coffee?
Guess what? We all drink coffee. It's right there.
Exactly.
Well, I want this coffee. Great. What does this coffee solve that this other
one doesn't?
Yeah, and I think that's a hard conversation depending on how a company grew up or the authorization an individual may have as part of that startup life, and then bringing in a process to say, let's have a discussion before we go and spend money.
So we talked about empathy. We talked about
yes,
a little bit about integrity, and then we talked about pragmatism. But what do you think makes these? Because I know you see a lot of startups because you're plugged into the whole VC industry, let's call it. But what do you think makes a startup successful?
I think that's tough. I can't say there's a like, here's the clear guidance of the things that make a startup successful, but I think the founder is so critical. Like this has to be your everything, and you have to be able to move mountains, right? And some of us recognize that in individuals, and you go, wow, you're going to go conquer this space. You don't care what anyone's going to say about how to conquer it. You'll take the feedback, but you're going to go conquer this space. I want to help you. For me, that's really exciting. So watch out for this one. But as far as success, there has to be a market for people to buy it. There has to be a problem statement where people are willing to give you budget. And I think in security, sometimes we believe things are going to be good, but guess what? If there's no budget, if there's a cycle, if there's no line item that someone can say, I'm giving up X for Y, you're not going to get the budget support either. So how do you get that traction and go to market motion? So
that's the problem with some of these like add-on features, or that are like, they're trying to be companies, but they're really just small problems, right?
That's a chronic thing I think about. Is this a feature or is this a company? Right? And if it's a feature, well, then again, is it successful if it exits in a 2-year window and it's 300 million or 100 million? Like, I'm fascinated. I still don't understand how half of this stuff works.
Yeah.
I love learning and I love growing and I love meeting founders that have found the passion of what they're going to solve for the next, let it be 3, 5, or 10 years of their life. And you're like, I just want to help them be successful. Because if they're successful, a lot of my peers in my community will have less pain with this topic. Because as we think of those big, like say for dope security, there's a lot of VPNs, traditional VPNs that plague companies' experiences for employees to be, let it be successful, let it be efficient, whatever you want to call it, just having a fast speed because they have to go to a point of presence in another part of the world. And it's
crazy. But also people don't realize that you're literally backhauling traffic.
Correct.
There is no mistake. Like, you used to use and VPN everything, you were backhauling traffic. Now you're backhauling everything to a data center.
Yes.
That's just not owned by you.
I mean, it's to another place in a location, and then is like, is that an efficient route? Is that a good experience? And speed to the experience. And, when we think about the fundamentals of what a business does and why people come there to work, it's not to sit and watch the little wheel spin and say loading.
And that's crazy, right? Because you work at a front-end company. I say front-end because for me, it's the cream of the crop, right? It is something that is a high degree of confidence that you're using Vercel, you probably have a good idea what you're doing. Now, what I've found is that cybersecurity companies and products have the worst load times with the worst front-end I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it gets bloated.
I mean, it's so old. I mean, and it's there's just not an affinity, or there's not even a reason. People don't have the passion to fix these things, which sucks.
Well, that's why there are people like you to go solve them.
But I was in those
other
big companies.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
That's the inspiration you take from that problem statement.
True.
Here's the opportunity. And wow, I met all these customers, and guess what? They're paying the money, but they're not even happy with the product. It's just, this is the best of the worst. And you go, wow, I could make that better, and actually maybe I'll just make the best of the best.
That for me, that's the reason why I ended up doing something like this, because I did not ever think that like we had to go away, because Symantec, big company, right?
Sure.
ForcePoint, there for a couple of years, I learned so much there.
Yeah.
But when you go in and you start thinking about it, like, well, every single company that they say they're different, they just end up being the same, because none of them are focused on the user experience. None of them are focused on the empathy, the integrity, the pragmatism, all these things that we've been talking about. I don't know why, but I never want to be like that. And that's, I think, a big part of being from California.
I think that's fair. And you have to be careful with how you scale and who you scale with.
That's also true.
So even when it comes to hiring, I'm very double indexed, triple indexed on like, what is the problem statement that you're bringing someone in and what are they going to do, versus I have a thematic and I want someone to solve this thing. What if they lead you down the wrong path because they did it at those big companies and they're just playing the hits?
But I think that's also relevant for, if you are going to hire someone, you should have a very, very, very clear job what they're going to do.
It's going to change in startup land, but yes, I think you need to be very explicit on what is the relationship, how are you going to work with them, but your first 100 people, that's really going to define the core of your company.
Right, because some people, they try to grow for the amount of satisfying numbers. Oh, we have this many people at the company. That's not like a criteria for whether you're a good company or not.
I think it's an indicator to showcase growth for a lot of folks. And it's interesting to know your entry point into that journey, what changes have happened, or is it was a big number and all of a sudden it's just a really tiny number and now it's now no longer a business.
Now no longer a business, yeah. I think this idea of startups and everything like that, it's everyone has their own journey. But I think like whether you're going in and applying the security to something like Vercel, or whether you're building something from scratch, those three kind of tenets are really, really important.
Very true.
Yeah. Ty, but what makes Dope so unique that you believe in it? Because that is what makes me happy.
Well, first things first, I think we covered on it. It's you. And that's a big part of it, is the inspiration behind the why. And as that's happening, why is dope security so good? I think it's very straightforward for me. You're flying direct. It's a logical traveling path on the internet from a user standpoint where they don't have to care, versus you're forcing them to go down routes that are just going to give them a worse experience. So I feel like it's a very obvious aspect of the marketing that's even coming.
Fly direct.
Go directly to the resource that you need and want, have the visibility into it, make it easy for your end user as well as your administrators and engineers. Like, that's the goal.
And to be honest, we put all that together and that's what you get. It's dope.
Dope. That's it.
Dude, this has been super fun.
I've enjoyed this chat as well.
And round 2 will come soon. But until then, hope everyone has fun. And yeah, sounds good, man.
Thanks for the ride.
Yeah.